Hi guys, we're back for chapter 6 of The Trouble with Lemons. Let's get started. Ah, crap. I almost barfed all over my assignment pad. I looked again and I still didn't believe it. Over the weekend, I was supposed to have collected 20 rocks for Old Lady Waverly and be able to tell what each one was by looking at it, feeling it, and scratching it on things. It's a perfect end to a lousy weekend. As if I didn't have enough on my mind. What's the matter, dear? Miss Saunders yelled from downstairs. Nothing. It's my stupid, idiotic, lame-brained science homework. Well, don't be long. It's getting late. It was getting late, all right. I'd finally finished up all my other work, and I could barely keep my eyes open. I almost climbed into bed without even being told. Then when I flipped my pad open to double-check, I saw the science assignment. Couldn't believe it. And Old Lady Waverly would be in all her glory if I showed up empty-handed. I stumbled downstairs and out the door in a kind of sleepy version of panic. It was too dark, and I didn't have the ambition to search the whole yard, so I ended up grabbing a bunch of rocks from the flower beds. I thought I'd struck the jackpot. I lugged them upstairs in a paper bag and dumped them on the floor. Oh, crap. I stared in disbelief at the bright red, white, and blue stones the old owners had left behind. Why me? What's the matter now, dear? My stupid moronic science rocks. They're painted like Fruit Loops. I found a file and started scraping them down, but it didn't do any good. All of them were same kind of crushed stone, and there wasn't one listing for crushed stone in the whole stupid science book. I was trying to decide whether to slit my wrist or go outside for another bunch of rocks when Miss Sanders came in and told me I had to go to bed. Come on, Tyler. Your work will keep. Right now you need your rest. She smiled when she saw my stupid red, white, and blue rocks and put them back in the bag. It's easy for you, Miss Saunders. You don't have to face Old Lady Waverly tomorrow with those goofy-looking things. Even though I was pouting, I was really glad to get to bed. I told myself I'd get up early and find some more rocks. I didn't. I should have known. Monday morning is the pits, so one thing you can always count on. When Miss Saunders woke me up, I was so groggy I felt like I'd been drugged. It took all my concentration just to get out of bed and take a shower. I did make it to school on time, barely, and that was only because Chucky happened to be painting the front porch when I came out stumbling out of the house 10 minutes late, dropping my books all over the driveway, and he gave me a ride. I weaved my way through groups of loud, laughing kids who didn't have enough brains to be miserable, and sped up the stairs to my locker. Mary Grace Madigan was calmly organizing her locker and sorting out all the books she'd need for the morning. Exactly what I needed to see. It's kids like her who make kids like me look worse than we really are. Mary Grace sat behind me in nearly all my classes because her name was after mine on the teacher's alphabetical list. For some reason, the MC in McAllister is alphabetized under Mac. That's why her locker was also next to mine. I scooted up beside her and tried 3 or 4 different ways of dialing 4028 as half the messy stack of books and papers I'd scooped up from the driveway started slipping out from under my arm and tumbled around my feet. The lock finally released, and I pulled the handle up and out. The bottom of the locker door gaped open an inch or so, but the top was jammed. I jiggled the handle up and down and yanked harder until the door flew open and banged me in the nose. The remaining books dropped from under my arm, and a few others toppled out of my locker and piled up with the others around my feet. I groaned. Nice way to start a new week. I crouched down and began stuffing layers of junk on top of other layers of junk already at the bottom of my locker. Funny, you know that? Mary Grace, having finished making her locker look like something out of Better Homes and Gardens, was standing above me, looking down at my jumbled mess of books and papers. You probably love it when people fall down the stairs, too, I said. Depends on who it is, she said, laughing. Look, you want some help? I'm good at this. Really. She didn't wait for an answer. She brushed past me and began pulling everything from my locker, including the large textbooks and permanently twisted notebooks wedged on the bottom, and began stacking them neatly up on the shelf. Before I knew it, my books were perfectly arranged in a beautifully tapered pile, titles facing out, and the books I needed for the morning were waiting in a neat pile at my feet. How could you possibly do that to a locker in less than a week? She shook her head in disbelief. I don't know. It's a gift, I guess. She left, Do you clean your own room at home? I can't imagine. Kind of. Well, sort of, I said, and then I laughed too. Not really. If Mrs. Saunders didn't help me keep my room straightened up, our house might have been condemned by now. I'm the only one in my family who's a total slob. If I didn't look a little like Chris, everybody probably would have thought I was adopted or something. It drove Mom and Dad crazy. It was the one thing about me they agreed on. Dad, being a former military man, couldn't stand any kind of clutter. And Mom said it was deplorable that I thought since I was a boy I didn't have to pick up after myself. I told her that wasn't fair. I know if I'd been a girl, I still would have been a slob. It's just, I don't know, I always seem to have other stuff on my mind. One time, Mom told Mrs. Saunders not to go near my room. Mom always warned me about Mrs. Saunders' heart not being so great, and maybe she figured cleaning up a room like mine could really hurt her. Plus, she probably wanted to see how rotten I'd let it get. After a few days, she marched me up there with a vacuum cleaner, a laundry basket, and a hefty garbage bag, and told me not to set foot outside the door, until my room looked the way a room should look. That meant the way she thought a room should look. Christopher tossed in a baseball bat and told me to use it if I saw any suspicious movements under all the crud. And he said not to worry, he'd sneak food to me every day. Ha. Later that afternoon, Miss Saunders came sneaking in and gave me a hand. It was to be our little secret. She said, "Don't you worry, Tyler. I used to have to tidy up after your father and brother, too, and they didn't even know it. A man just can't clean the way a woman can." She was careful not to talk like that in front of Mom. Mom was always trying to liberate Mrs. Saunders. When Mom would start in on her "This is the 20th century" lecture, Miss Saunders would always wink at me. I think she knew that Mom wouldn't have much luck at reforming either of us. I looked down at Mary Grace's pile of stuff. "Hey, Mary Grace, where's your science frogs?" "Home. They're not due till next week, remember?" "Oh, yeah. Right." Something inside me did a cartwheel. Mary Grace hurried off to homeroom almost before I could thank her. I watched her for a moment, thinking. Mary Grace was one of the prettiest, most popular girls in the 8th grade. I wondered if she kind of liked me, or if she thought I was some kind of pathetic pig. I couldn't tell. I slipped through my homeroom door right as the bell went off and joined the other kids in mumbling the Pledge of Allegiance. Then after a few warm-up clicks and rapping noises, Mr. Blumberg's voice came over the PA system with the morning announcements. The first thing he did was ask for a moment of silence in memory of Robert Anderson, who he said it would be sorely missed around the school and around town. I hadn't even formed a good picture of Boo Boo yet when Mr. Blumberg raced on with the rest of the announcements. No crying over spilt milk for that guy. Everybody was talking about Boo Boo all day, but nobody knew that much. At lunch, Jeff Hunter, whose father was county sheriff, told us that some scared little kid had called the deputy in the middle of the night to report finding the body. The cops were hoping that little kid, or the other kid who was with him, would come forward so they could get more information out of them. As it stood, they didn't have much to go on. They could tell that Boo Boo had suffered a knock to the back of his head, but that could have happened if he fell in. They were hoping the coroner's report would turn up something. A scared little kid. I was glad Limey hadn't let me give him a name, and Limey was glad we wouldn't get caught. Really, Ty, it was good you sounded like such a little jerk. They'll never guess in a million years the body was found by a couple of 8th graders. Thanks, Lime, I said. Anything to help. After 7th period, Mary Grace helped me pack the books I need to bring home, figuring in which work I'd be able to get done in study hall the next day. She'd eliminated most of the guesswork from school. She knew which teachers graded on neatness and punctuality, which ones admired original thought, and which ones wanted nothing but their own words flung back at them on exams. I couldn't believe it. You're in the top group, Tyler, and you need to know these shortcuts. But don't worry. Since you're new here, I can fill you in. But it didn't matter that I was new. Not really. Schools were always kind of mysterious to me. Most teachers I'd had seemed to like me all right, even though most said I worked below my potential. But success or failure was hit or miss with me, like walking through a minefield and hoping you didn't get blown up. But for kids like Mary Grace, It was like they had studied the minefield and drawn maps so they never accidentally stepped on anything that would go bang. It wouldn't hurt being more like that, and it sure would have made Dad happy. We walked down the front steps of the school toward the street. "Wasn't that awful about Boo Boo Anderson?" Mary Grace said. "He was the sweetest guy." Everybody claimed to feel bad about Boo Boo, but with Mary Grace it was different. She didn't sound excited. It was like some kind of fun mystery or something. "Yeah, that was pretty bad. I can't help thinking about those poor little kids who found him. Imagine little kids running around on their own in the middle of the night. Some parents, huh?" We had almost reached Main Street. I watched the way the breeze and the sunlight played through her sandy hair. "Maybe they weren't so little," I said. "That old deputy probably thinks anybody under 30 is a little kid. Plus, they probably sneaked out. Maybe they couldn't tell their names because they had the kind of parents who'd be real upset if they knew their kids were outside fiddling around at night." "Maybe," she said. "But I bet those kids are having some kind of nightmares after that experience." I knew I was one of them. I left Mary Grace in front of her house and kept walking home. I almost wished I had told her. Okay, that's it for chapter 6. I'll see you for 7 soon.